have literally the most diverse legislature in the history of Washington State, the most diverse, and that's 7 people of color in the Senate. So not like it's a crazy thing, but that's the most diverse.
Yeah.
And we've transformed the entire system. It's because of those perspectives, right? There are folks who are like, oh, this is important because I've seen what happens when you fail. So they show up and they work hard to get things done. And there's about 147 legislators in Washington State. And I'll be honest, not everybody works hard.
Yeah.
Like, there's a clear perspective from me where, interestingly, the people that have, adversity in their backgrounds, I have seen them kind of step it up a little bit because they understand the impacts of it. This is the first time we had somebody who's formerly incarcerated as a representative.
Wow.
And she's transforming the criminal justice system.
Wow.
We have folks who were formerly homeless. We had a person who was homeless while running for office, and then she won.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Rabino.
And this DJ in the building.
And you listening to the UpNUp Podcast.
Yeah.
Wait, what are we doing?
I don't know, just listen.
Yes. Welcome.
What it do?
Ladies and gentlemen, you're tuning to the UpNUp Podcast on the UpNUp Network. I'm your host, Rabino.
And I'm DJ man.
What's up, man? How you doing, boss?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm feeling good, bro. I'm feeling good. Feeling very settled right now. Very blessed, I told you these candles would help with that, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's a thing now.
Yeah, man. Trying to set the vibe. You good, though? You feeling good?
I'm good, man.
Feeling great?
Yep.
All right, cool. If this is your first time tuning in, as I stated, this is the UpNUp Podcast. This is the podcast where we're focused on cultivating culture, right? We do that by providing amazing stories of individuals, groups, movements, right? Hustlers, shakers, pioneers, right? Lane carvers. I got a lot of metaphors. I can keep going. Let me know. I'll stop. Okay, I'll stop. You get the point. But if this is your first time tuning in, thank you and welcome to the family. Obviously, as I mentioned, the family, we got to shout them out, right? The supporters, the encouragers, the viewers, the listeners, anybody who's been supporting the UpNUp Podcast and the UpNUp platform as a whole. Salute to you. We appreciate you. We love you. And we thank you, right?
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
All right, man. I'm excited, man. We've been waiting for this episode for a while.
Yep.
Right? A while is like 2 weeks, right? Nah, but much longer than that. And if you're a first-time listener, we pride ourselves on making sure we could bring a very compelling story, right? Something that's going to inspire us, uplift us, and motivate us. And today's guest, I would say, is a man whose life's been dedicated to service and working hard for his community and the people who make it possible for him to pioneer the way. He's definitely a true culture cultivator. He's keeping everything he's doing on the up and up, right? Obviously. For those who do not know, he's a hometown hero from Seattle, for Seattle, as well as the entire state of Washington. A little bit about him. In 2018, he was elected to the Washington State Senate for the 34th District, which actually made him one of the first, or we could say the first ever Vietnamese American to serve in the position for the state of Washington, which is a very big deal, right, in terms of representation and in that space, in that realm. And currently, well, I mean, the guy doesn't stop, man. He's a hustler, right? So the inspiring work definitely did not stop there, as right now he's stepping up to run for King County Executive office in this year's election, with really a committed promise to reshape and provide a vision for what the county can become, based on what it currently has and how it's currently existing and the people that exist within it. I'm super excited. We're all super excited in this room. So let's just get straight to it, man. Our guest is none other than the agent of change himself, Joe Nguyen. Can we get a round of applause?
Yeah.
Give it up.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate you inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for coming.
Welcome, man. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you, boss.
Yeah.
Definitely. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I was just saying earlier, I was on a retreat with the Washington State Senate, kind of planning out things for the next year as well, because it doesn't matter where you are, you also have to have a plan to move forward, because without that vision, kind of like what you're saying, you're never going to have action. So it's been a good past couple of days talking to folks in the legislature, seeing what's going on, but I feel good to be here. Yeah,
man. You're definitely a busy guy.
Yeah,
to say the least, right?
Yeah, no, we keep it pretty active. In my office, I didn't know that. So first off, I'm used to working like multiple jobs since I was a kid, including being a janitor and washing dishes. So when I got to the legislature, I'd do like 30, 40 meetings a day. I thought that was normal, 30, 40 meetings. I talked to other members. I'm like, I do like 4 or 5. I'm like, what? I thought you're supposed to work hard once you get to
40
places.
meetings
like,
a day, that's crazy.
Dude, we do 15-minute increments and then a few hours throughout the day. And then I have people send in their information in advance. So the night before, I read through the materials. They get here, and then we talk about their policy issues, and then we figure out what that solution is. So we try to reshape what it looks like to be engaged. And then you guys actually came down one time to take a look.
Yeah. We actually did come out there. Me, Biniam, and Arif, we came out there. You got the work is evident, man. It's hard for me to answer text messages sometimes, man. So I don't think I'm suited for that. But anyway, it's good to have you, man. And a little bit about our show. We usually every episode we start every show with the quote of the day, and something to get the vibe right, get the conversation started. Brother man Erm is the man of the quotes. What you got for us today, boss?
All right, the quote of the day today is, "You must be bold, brave, and courageous, and find a way to get in the way."
I like that one.
Yeah.
Who was that quote by?
John Lewis. Yeah.
Solid.
Yep.
Solid, man. Late great.
You want me to run it back?
Yeah, man. Come on, run it
Yeah.
back. Some people, I think that may have went over some people's heads. You got
Okay.
it?
So the quote is, "You must be bold, brave, and courageous, and find a way to get in the way."
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's big, man.
Yeah.
I think that quote definitely steers into kind of your story and your
Yeah.
journey. And what we do here is we love to get into people's journeys and how they came about. But before we get into your journey, as I was touching in the intro, obviously you're currently running for King County Executive Office.
That's right.
And I'm curious for those listening and watching, like what would you say is the inspiration and kind of the urgency for you to step up and say, hey, I want to put my hat in the race, and where did that kind of stem from for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's similar to when I ran for state senate, right? When you're from the community that has oftentimes been ignored, you see what happens when politicians don't pay attention to the issues that matter most in your life. And King County, for those who don't know, is the 12th largest county in the United States, bigger than 14 different states.
Wow.
So a lot of the major issues that we're facing actually happen at the local level, specifically at the county. And when you have somebody who is kind of detached from the day-to-day, who is, in it for whatever other reasons, you see a lack of investments in communities that I care about. So, talk about climate change, talk about affordability, talk about homelessness, talk about youth jails, talk about whatever. All that stuff happens at the county. And for us to have an equitable King County that is inclusive, that everybody has the opportunity to be successful, it needs a leader with that vision, not just somebody who is kind of maintaining the status quo. So during this pandemic, we saw a lot of the issues that we're facing exacerbated because of COVID-19. And, we don't have time to wait. People are actually dying on our streets. Our earth is on fire. We don't have access to education. We don't have access to healthcare. We don't have access to the programs to support our communities and our future. And I'm not going to wait. And you got to find ways to be bold and get in the way, because folks haven't done that for a long time. So I got in the race because I felt that we deserved better as a community. And I felt like a spot like King County, with our values named after Martin Luther King Jr., deserved better. And so far, I'm right. And so far, I believe that people believe that as well. But if we don't take that step, if we don't cause good trouble, like John Lewis said, it won't happen. So I think it takes all of us to be able to change the way things are being done. But it also takes that spark as well, because it's tough. It is tough to run for office like this. It is tough to be in a space that wasn't built for you. But it's also important to get in the way to change how things are done.
That's real, man. You got to put yourself in uncomfortable positions because they're uncomfortable for a reason. Right? Yeah.
Well, and look, as a young person of color that grew up in a very low income community, oftentimes in politics, people will say, wait your turn, wait your turn. It's not your time to be senator yet. But what they don't realize is people like me or like us, it's never going to be our turn unless we step up and do it ourselves. And, I've seen what happens when people waited for their turns and just played the political game. People like us on the margins get ignored. And I'm not having that anymore.
No, that's real. That's real.
So I want to take it back for a minute. Just talk about your early life, early interests, your uprising. So
I was born and raised in South King County. My family, they were refugees from Vietnam, so they came, after the war. So born in White Center and then raised in Burien. I live in West Seattle now. But when my father, when I was 7 years old, got into a car accident, it really kind of changed the paradigm of my life. And we were by no means doing financially well, but after that was devastating. So most of my life was basically helping take care of my father, having a single mom, raising 4 kids at that time, and really just trying to survive, right? Like I was a janitor in high school. I washed dishes when I was in college. I was hustling, doing things to kind of make ends meet, and that was kind of my existence. And what's interesting is that in the communities that we come from, especially those that are fleeing like a regime like Vietnam was at that time, it was actually kind of frowned upon to get involved in the community. My mom didn't want me to do that stuff because she wanted me to focus on school, get ahead. So most of my life was really just trying to like keep my head down, do well, went to school, worked in tech, all that stuff. And what was really telling for me was when I ran for student body president in high school and then in college, my mom said, "Hey, don't run because that's you're gonna put yourself out there. It's gonna suck. Like you just focus on your school." And what's interesting is that oftentimes in our lives we're told that we don't belong in certain spaces. People like us didn't belong in certain spaces.
Yeah.
And the sad part is that if you don't have somebody telling you that you do belong, you might actually believe the haters. You might actually believe the doubters.
Yeah.
So
real.
for me, luckily I was a middle child, so I was rebellious. I did it anyway.
Hey, shout out to middle children out there.
Right? Shout out, yeah.
That's me too.
So what's interesting is that
I
after being
identify.
told that you can't do something by not just people that may hate on you, but also your relatives, I did it anyway. And then what I found was that when I got to that position, I did very well. When I got to student body president at Sound University, I won and I did very well. When I got into politics, I won and I did very well.
Yeah.
So there was a pattern where people were oftentimes neglected and excluded from the process, but when people that were closest to the pain then got close to the power, it transformed entire systems. So that was just the awakening for me, was that we've been gaslit for too long. We've been told these lies for too long. And that's how I got involved in the first place. Honestly, it was because I was working on issues around affordability, around homelessness. There was a young man named Tommy Lay who was shot in Burien by law enforcement, and I was pissed off because people in our communities were dying. And I wanted somebody to help us. I'd go meet with legislators, I'd go meet with officials, try to figure it out. And time after time again, I just found apathy. I just found folks who were like, yeah, whatever, I don't care. It's like not my community. You don't donate to campaigns because you're not rich. You know what I mean? Your communities don't vote in big blocks, so they just ignored us. So at a certain point, I just got tired of trying to advocate for issues that I knew were important, and I said I'm just gonna do it myself. So I ran for state senate a few years ago against 10 other people. 10 other people.
That's a lot.
Was out fundraise, was told that we wouldn't get enough endorsements and that we wouldn't be able to win. Ended up winning that race by 17%. 17%. That's a landslide in politics around here.
For those who don't know, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal against people that were picked to win. People that had 5 times more money than I did, had all the endorsements. And the reason why I think we were successful is because I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play games. I'm here to get stuff done. And I think folks realize that pretty quick. And even for this race, it's audacious for me to run for such an important seat. This seat and the governor's seat and like maybe a couple of other ones are the top tier seats in all of Washington State.
Wow.
And the biggest thing that I've learned throughout this experience, having 60 plus debates, having done all these different things so far, oh yeah, I belong here just fine.
I feel like you kind of built yourself. I've been thinking about this. Like sometimes we build ourselves for who we're going to become. And we're built for a lot of things because we take time to really just put ourselves in positions to grow. And I think going back into kind of your early life, we talk about this a lot on the show, where sometimes when you get to a certain age, you reflect and you look back and everything makes sense. Right? At the time, it probably didn't make sense. So for you, like when you were stepping out, obviously middle child, being rebellious, I can relate. But did you feel like you were comfortable being a leader at a young age?
No, I don't know if I did or not. And honestly, it was kind of awkward. I think I kind of gravitated towards it just because in my cohort of friends, everybody was very kind of shy and quiet and very diligent. And I was always good at school, but then I always knew where I can push the boundaries as well. So in the sense of a leader, it was more of just like, hey, we can do things different, y'all. We can do things different. And I think that's kind of where it came from. But also, I think having a little bit of a chip on my shoulder too was part of it.
That
and
helps.
And I think there's a fine line between cocky and confident, especially when it comes to politics.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And like
Definitely.
I stumble here and there, but like oftentimes, when somebody tells me I can't do something, I don't know how you guys are. it makes me want to do it.
Oh yeah.
Right? I'm like, I don't just want to do it. I want to crush it.
I don't even hear that. That's just noise.
Yeah, that's just noise.
It's white noise. Yeah, for sure.
So you do that. You hear people tell you can't do something, and then you do it, and you crush it. You're like, oh, that's weird. Mm-hmm. You hear it again, do it, and crush it. Oh, that's weird. So at a certain point, you're like, nah, it's you, not me.
Yeah. No, that's true. It's contagious for sure. Yeah. It's definitely contagious.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about being student body president in college at Seattle U. What was that transition like when you first got there? Like, what were your thoughts, your feelings, everything like that?
Well, it was also kind of funny because it's similar to my Senate race where I literally have no background in politics. Mm-hmm. I didn't study political science. I didn't intern for anybody. I didn't staff anybody. I was just involved in the community. And that's why folks were like, he came out of nowhere. Seattle University was the same. So I was heavily involved in community groups. I was heavily involved in different organizations, but I did not do a thing with student government. But it was more of just like, hey, why don't we have like subsidized transit for our students? Why can't we get better food? Mm-hmm. Why can't we have more funding for these programs? Yeah. And then it was just like, oh, the student body president or the student government needs to do it. Yeah. So I ran in my junior year, which is unheard of. In the history of Seattle University, at that time at least, I don't know if they've done it ever since, there's only been 2 students who've ever had multiple terms because it's usually a senior and then they graduate.
Got it.
So I'm one of only 2 in the 60-year history of the university to have 2 terms. And I ran in my junior year, and it was kind of similar. There was a person that was supposed to be president. She ran and I ran, and they didn't take me seriously. Mm-hmm. But they didn't realize that when you win an election, it's not about what you've done; it's about what you will do and who you're connected with.
Yeah, it's chess, not checkers.
It's right, and the way you win is to get more votes. Mm-hmm. So we ran in my junior year, and I won, and the transformation for me was almost it wasn't night and day per se. It was still doing the same things that I was doing before, but just having that title to actually move things forward.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it was kind of interesting where it didn't change me very much because I was already doing that stuff. And I think that's a problem sometimes people have when they get to politics is that the title becomes them. Mm-hmm. They don't become the title becomes them.
Yeah.
Right. And they lose why they came there in the first place. Yeah. And kind of the same thing with the Senate and even with this. It's like, honestly, if the best thing for me to serve this county was to be a janitor, I will sign up and I will start sweeping floors and we'll get stuff done.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why we've been able to be successful is because there's a lot of noise that you get caught up in politics. Yeah. And it's easy to get caught up in that stuff. And it's easy to kind of get your feelings hurt. It's easy to kind of have, vitriol towards some of the things that happen. But for me, there's too much good stuff in this world to waste your time and energy on those negative things.
You got to keep your mind on the bigger picture too.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes the noise is necessary to test you to see how focused you truly are to the greater goal. Yeah. So I'm glad you touched on that. And getting into kind of transitioning out of college, right? You obviously have a professional career. Working for companies such as Expedia or Microsoft. Yeah. But while you were also working for those companies and doing a good job, you also poured time into the community. Yeah. Right? You were doing community work, whether it was with Wellsprings Family Services or the law enforcement oversight organization. And so, there's a lot of people out here now who have, really good jobs. Yeah. But their heart's with the community as well. Yeah. And it's kind of hard for them to balance, I have a 9-to-5, but I want to also commit my time. What was that like for you? How was it for you to balance that?
It's difficult, and especially when you live in Seattle, and it is crazy expensive, right? So you got to do what you need to do in order to be financially stable and set yourself up and your family up as well. But that was kind of it. Was I did not feel fulfilled in the roles that I had. Not that I didn't like them; they were great. But at the same time, I remember how hard it was for me growing up. And here's this random story where, after my dad got into his car accident, he was quadriplegic. So my brother and I would have to carry him up and down the front steps of our house in order to get him to doctor's appointments. And then one day, one of our neighbors came by and said, hey, why don't you guys have a ramp to just push him? Couldn't afford one, obviously. Yeah. So he came by the next weekend with his buddies and built one for us. Right? Wow. So that's the type of people that I had in my life growing up. And I wanted to be that person for everybody else. So I've always kind of had a mindset of how do you serve others. And the balance is not easy. I'm gonna be real, but I don't sleep as much as most people should. Yeah. In my first few years of the legislature, I was probably sleeping 3, maybe 4 hours a night. I'd have an app to track my sleep. I take Zip Fizz and caffeine to get me going to do all the things. Yeah. But it's one of those things where it's I don't know. I grew up like very close to the margins, so you're used to kind of that trauma.
Yeah.
I don't think it's healthy, but for me, having lived that growing up, being the way that we were, being able to have that experience was almost a superpower in the legislature, which I would not recommend to anybody to do.
Well, it's
term.
true because, you know, we growing up, you know, in marginalized communities, it's like you got to work twice as hard just to get half.
Yep.
Right. So knowing that, hearing that, seeing that, you know, seeing our parents work the way they did. Yeah. It's just kind of naturally instilled in us to just go harder, so we don't make excuses.
You don't. I mean, because you can't.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's life or death. Well, that's one of the things that I've observed kind of in politics too, is that like you have literally the most diverse legislature in the history of Washington State, the most diverse, and that's 7 people of color in the Senate. So not like it's a crazy thing, but that's the most diverse. Yeah. And we've transformed the entire system. It's because of those perspectives, right? There are folks who are like, oh, this is important because I've seen what happens when you fail. So they show up and they work hard to get things done. And there's about 147 legislators in Washington State. And I'll be honest, not everybody works hard. Yeah. Like, there's a clear perspective from me where, interestingly, the people that have, you know, adversity in their backgrounds, I have seen them kind of step it up a little bit because they understand the impacts of it. This is the first time we had somebody who's formerly incarcerated as a representative. Wow. And she's transforming the criminal justice system. Wow. We have folks who were formerly homeless. We had a person who was homeless while running for office, and then she won.
That's powerful.
Adding more resources. My family relied on basic needs and TANF programs, and we got more funding to those things, right? So oftentimes the reason why we see some of the illnesses that we have in our community is because we've neglected things for too long. Yeah. But now that you have folks who are impacted by that neglect now at the table, we're trying to fix all these things. It's going to take some time because there's decades and decades to unwind. Yeah. But like, it's powerful. Yeah, no. Like, representation is powerful.
Yeah, it's the right direction for sure.
Yeah.
You know, that's very powerful, honestly.
Yeah,
well, and like the biggest thing for me, right, leadership is more like, great leaders do more than just good things. It's not just passing bills or allocating money. They empower other leaders to be successful as well. Yeah. It's like a startup company. You can't do everything on your own. You got to have people on the team doing great work. That's how you scale. That's how you elevate. Yeah. So the first thing I did after I won, seek out other people to run for other offices. Gurmai Zahalai, Sam Cho, Brandon Hersey, Cynthia Dillastrin, like all these folks. Yeah. It's not enough just to be in that seat. It's what will you do with it when you get there.
That's real.
And then for me, it's using that power to give it back to other people. Right? Like, that's the kind of power paradox. Is oftentimes people who get into power feel like they need to hoard it. Yeah. That's how you lose power, because you're losing your influence. Yeah. For me, it's how do you give it away? Because this is an honor to serve, but it's an even greater honor to be able to help people's daily lives. Yeah. Literally, I have seen investments that we've made. You know, my family went to the food bank growing up, so I made investments in food banks. My family relied on TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. Hundreds of thousands of families will be more stable because of the work we've done, and that's going to support the future generations as well. Yeah. And that's the type of tenacity and engagement that you should require from your elected officials. Yeah. Most folks are like, I'm figuring out what my next step is. Yeah. So they do just enough. This is the sad reality of politics that we have right now. This is the sad reality. If you do the bare minimum, it'll take folks at least 10 years to notice that you actually are not very good at your job. Wow. You know what I mean? And like, you can coast. Yeah. You can just coast. Yeah. But if you're aggressive like me, if you're out there trying to get stuff done, it's scary. Yeah. Because the system is scared when, especially young people of color, coming in and saying, hey, that's broken.
It's a little disruptive,
He's going to disrupt. What else is he going to disrupt? The things that I care about? Yeah. Right? Exactly. So, like...
But they got to ask themselves, like, why is this so disruptive when he's doing his job passionately and aggressively? Yeah. Right? That shouldn't be disruptive.
It shouldn't be disruptive. And in fact, they should cultivate it. But, you know, I've seen the opposite in certain cases, especially when you have folks in this area. There's folks that I call faux-gressives. They're like fake progressives. In the area.
Was it faux-gressives?
Faux-gressives.
Okay. I'm gonna write that
down.
They
talk a big game. We got to help young people. We got to help people of color. We got to like transform these systems. Yeah. And then when push comes to shove, it's like, oh no, we kind of like the status quo. Yeah. We kind of like the status quo.
Yeah. There's a lot of like publicity stunting going on, and not just in politics, but it happens all over, you know. And I think sometimes, well, we talked about this a few days ago, where it was like the transparency aspect of holding like political positions. So you mentioned Gurmai. Gurmai is someone I think is a perfect example of being transparent in his day-to-day job, right? He's showing people, hey, I'm not just tweeting this, but hey, here's a picture. I'm here. I'm pulling up here. And sometimes it ain't even like nothing super monumental, but it's just showing you, hey, I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
And I think social media has allowed that now, where it's like, hey, people have the ability to tap in and pay attention and see what's going on. And I think as, people who are in those positions, they have the ability to let people in. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a two-way street too. The fact that it's so popular, that those posts are so popular, shows that there's a need and a hunger to feel heard and to be seen.
Yes.
Because for a lot of folks, you haven't seen that, and he's the only black council member in the state.
Yeah.
There's no other black council member in the entire state.
Yeah.
Right. So, and we've talked about this with him, where it's an interesting dynamic. Part of the reason why he does that as well is because when you're an elected official from a community that has historically been left out, and there's not many of you there, my district is not just my boundary or the people that I serve.
Yeah.
I get emails and calls from folks around the country, around the world, definitely around the state, that are like Asians or people of color, and they're like, hey, you're the first person that we've seen that we actually can feel like we value and trust.
Identify with.
That you can identify with.
Yeah.
So we like, sometimes you got to be low key because it's not in your district, but like we help people regardless of where they are. And it's because, when you're from a community that has been left out, like you don't have enough representation. So therefore you have to do more work. And that's why it's so important to elect other good leaders like him and other people's, because there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah. Representation is big. And, half of the battle is letting people believe that it's possible for someone who looks like them to do the job.
Correct.
And it's like a trust thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you go your whole life seeing someone who doesn't look like you, you're like, man, it's hard for me to trust that this person understands me or what I'm going through.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? And another thing we kind of touched on before the show, which is, you mentioned this when you first got into the Senate, bringing your true authentic self into that space, right? Like how do I adapt but not change who I am? Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of what was that like for you?
Yeah, no, that was so I'm one of the younger members of the legislature, and when I first got there, I'm dressed kind of how I dress now, jeans and like a sweater, whatever. And for the first couple of months, folks thought that I was staff. They're like, oh, are you whatever's assistant? And like they'd always ask if I was Senator Hasagawa's assistant, and I'm like, why'd you pick the only other Asian person to be his assistant? I was like, I could be anybody's assistant. Why'd you gotta pick the Asian guy? But no, I'm the senator, actually. So for a long time, I actually, in my head, was thinking about, should I change? Should I change the way that I act? Should I change the way that I look? Should I change the way that I behave simply to exist in this institution? And the answer was no. I think the important thing for me was to ensure that folks who don't see themselves in this process now see themselves in this process. And there was an NPR article that came out. They followed me the first day of getting sworn in. That was one of the key pieces where, look, I wore Jordans on the first day, right? Like I wore yoga pants from Lululemon on the floor because we sit there for 8 hours, right? Or like I use technology to help people access my office more, right? Like we talked about my office earlier, but one of the biggest things that I have in mind is having a gracious space. How do you ensure that this institution serves the people that you're supposed to serve? And for folks who've been down to Olympia, most of the times when you go down there, you feel inferior. It is meant to make you feel little. Right? Like the senators sit on a dais looking down on you. When you go into their office, it's a wood mahogany desk that's blocking you. They have this big chair. It's so uncomfortable, and like you don't know if you belong there. My office looks like a tech startup, right?
We pulled up on there. You got the Xbox in there for us.
There's an Xbox. There's a TV. We play like chill music. We got espresso. We got coffee. And what's interesting, too, is that there's the senator's office, which is a big office, and there's, like, the staff office, which is tiny. And for me, there's more staff members than there are me. So I gave them the big office, and I took the small one. And people were like, who are you? Like, you gave the big office away? And I'm like, dude, they got to work. I got to work. I'm never here. I'm on the floor, right? So you have to be intentional about how do you change these systems. You can't just show up and perpetuate what's being done. You have to actively dismantle a broken system. And that's what, we're doing, and that's what we're being that block the bad. What was the quote again?
Must be bold, brave, and courageous, and find a way to get in the way.
Find a way to get in the way. So we had to find a way to get in the way, and we've been successful, right? Like in my first year, I'm in a senior leadership role, helping negotiate the budget. I'm on committees that no first-term member has ever been on. And it's because we show up and do the work. And that's it. And like, you should expect more from your leaders. You should be able to show up and do the work. That's baseline.
Yeah,
right?
that's just bare minimum. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Just at least show up and do the job.
Yeah.
And well, speaking of quotes, I seen a quote which I thought was really powerful when you said politics should be about people and not careers. And it's like that quote like really hit home, because I'm like, man, I think that's really just what everybody wants, is for politics to really care about people. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I was just gonna tell you to explain that a little bit, but I think you've been doing it the whole time.
It's pretty tough.
Well, and like, that's for real, right? And like, I do that kind of a little bit of a jab, because a lot of the folks, you know, in politics make a career out of it. And honestly, if that is their goal, I actually don't mind, as long as you keep centering the people that you're supposed to serve. But so many folks, I'll talk to people who are thinking about running for office. I'll talk to people who are thinking about running for another office. And the first question I ask, why do you want to run, and why you? And like, nobody ever can answer. Like, I maybe, you know, if I've probably asked that hundreds of times, maybe like 2 or 3 folks actually had a legit answer about why they wanted to do it. And oftentimes, you know, the title is compelling. Having a seat is compelling. But at the same time, if you're not doing it for the right reasons, there's no point. So politics should be about people and not careers, because our community needs us. And for too long, it's been ignored. And when I talk about ignored, I mean, it's like South King County, South Seattle. You're talking about areas where I grew up, where you have underinvestments in health, in education, in transit, in economic opportunities. Right? Like, we should be working for those folks. And not just furthering our bottom lines. And that's kind of the dynamic that we have right now in the King County Exec race. He's openly said that he'd rather be governor of Washington State. Totally get it. Do you, bro. Like, that's fine. But you've not been showing up for our communities. Right? So you got to work, or else you don't belong there. That seat should be earned every single day. It's not a granted that you get it. And that's a different paradigm that I have versus a lot of folks, is that folks feel entitled. Right? Like, I was in this seat and in this seat and this seat, and now I deserve to be here. No. Nobody deserves to be in a public office.
Entitlements.
Entitlement's a bad thing.
It's crazy,
you should
man.
earn it every single day.
No, I heard a quote. I heard someone once say, entitlement's the thief of hard work. That's real. That's
very real. And that is very, very real. And that's why I think, and for me too, look, my father was 43 when he got into that car accident. I'm 38 now. So for me, I think part of the reasons why I'm so aggressive in how I do things is because I don't know how much time we have. Folks in our community sometimes don't even get a shot, let alone for this long. So we have to step up and do the work.
You got to make the most of the present. And I think it's interesting because, you know, at the end of the day, nobody's perfect, right? No politician's perfect. But I think nowadays there's an ability to be transparent and show people, hey, at least I'm trying. Right? And I think that's important. What do you think about that?
Oh, 100%. And I've talked to Pramila Jayapal about this, where she'll be out on the campaign trail and somebody says, hey, I like these and these, but I don't like this stuff. And she's like, well, are you married? Yeah. Do you agree with your spouse 100% of the times? No, of course not. Why would you expect that from a politician? Like, you need to have the same values. You need to know that they work for them. We're never going to agree 100% of the times, but at the very least, you should know when you disagree and then, like, move forward. Right? So that's what we should expect, is that we're not going to agree all of the time, but will you show up? Will you work hard? Yes.
That's the thing. It's like, now you can show people you're working hard. And if you're not showing it, people are going to assume what's going on. You know, and when there's no results being brought. So, I'm glad you touched on that, but I'm also curious about, you got a lot going on, right, at once. You know what I mean? And so, what do you do outside of work to kind of like balance you out a little bit? I know it's not all work. You're human, man. Come on, everybody.
So for folks who don't know, I still work full time at Microsoft because the legislature is part time. So I work at Microsoft. I'm a state senator running for office, and I have 3 kids as well. Plus, I still serve on nonprofit boards and different committee and commissions. So it stays pretty busy. I probably am not spending enough time on self-care. I do a lot of cooking. That's one of the things that calms me down. Cooking is kind of cathartic because there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it's all within like an hour or two. Because oftentimes the policies that we work on, or even like the programs I'm trying to build, you know, it takes like months and months and months to see a result. But for cooking, it's like, I got this piece of meat, I smoked it for a couple of hours, and then we ate it, and it was awesome. Or it wasn't. I got to do better. You know? So cooking is one of those things, but playing with my kids and my family is probably the biggest thing. Family time. Like, I have a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and they're just firecrackers. Like, they're
2, 4, 6.
2, 4, 6, right? Like, you planned it. And they're amazing kids. So teaching them how to ride a bike, like I try to be the fun dad. So we go and like go to the store, get some toys. And for me, it's a lot of it is because I didn't really have that experience growing up. So I want to be able to give them everything. Like they go to soccer games, they do jiu-jitsu, like just watching them grow as people. Yeah. That's one of the most rewarding things. But, you know, for fun, if I had time, it was photography, it was food, it was travel. Okay. But not as much anymore. Okay.
No, I mean, it's important to, like you said, self-care. Self-care is super important.
Yeah, it's very important.
I feel like it's not you don't just figure it out overnight. It's a constant,
it has
continuous, to be active. Yeah, it's a continuous journey and search of like, because, you know, self-care might look different this year than it will next year.
Yeah, you know I agree. Mm-hmm. I have a text thread with some folks who happen to be younger elected officials, and there's a few of us. And what's funny is that we rarely talk politics. It's usually like, whatever, you know, getting our house, like finances or like whatever, and like self-care. Yeah. And we give each other tips. Or like something random happens and we just want to like vent real quick. But it's that kind of stuff. It's making sure that you have a community around you to be able to kind of like bring you back down a little bit because it can get wild. And like we were talking before we turned on about like the idea of feeling lonely.
Exactly.
And like I felt lonely for a long time. A lot of us felt lonely for a long time because there wasn't that many people of color in office. And the fact that we have so many now is heartening, but also I think we have a critical mass to actually shift the way we do things as well. Yeah. And what we found is that oftentimes communities that are most burdened by bad policy are then asked to have to solve it, right? So like we weren't in power, the people in power messed it up. Now they're like, hey, communities of color, can you fix this? Oh, by the way, you get no resources, and then do it within 6 months because we want to show that we can do this before our next election, right? So like it's a weird paradigm that we exist in where you're asked to do, like you said earlier, twice as much. Twice as much, right? And that's just like normal. That's not normal for other people.
Yeah, that's crazy because you're just like, there was no resources in the beginning, so that's why it ended up like this in the first place, you know? And then, I mean, that seems like it'll be kind of frustrating, honestly.
It is frustrating. I'll be honest with you. I had a conversation with the senator who is new, and she's a person of color in the Senate, and like, she was like, I don't know if I'm running again because it kind of sucks. And like what she meant was a little bit facetious, but like is hard. And especially her being a black woman in the Senate is hard. And I get that. And it's because this institution wasn't meant for us, right? And like it's hard to explain it to folks who don't see it. Like they're in a dominant culture and it was meant for them so they don't see it. But we're out there like hustling, being questioned all the time, and then being asked to do much more than anybody else. And we get scrutinized for every little thing. Yeah. For every little thing. Man, like the number of times where I've seen a politician do something, I'm like, if that was a person of color, that guy is like done. Yeah. Like he did what? Yeah. Like, nah, that guy's done. But nothing, right? Like I remember I was talking to an elected official that had a mask with the logo on it. And it was like an Amazon logo, and he was in Seattle. Like, does that mean you're supporting Amazon? He's like, no, man. Like, I didn't have a mask. My roommate like had a mask, and I just put it like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, we get scrutinized for like the wildest things.
Can I live? Can I just live?
Yeah. Like, it's just like, can we just exist? Or you know, or I got in trouble a little bit because I was wearing like yoga pants on the Senate floor. And they're like, oh, you're kind of pushing it a little bit. I'm like, I don't think there's any rules to say again.
I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to do our jobs. Can I be comfortable?
So now it's like a thing and everybody's okay. But it's just like that thing where you get scrutinized more than anybody else. And oftentimes, it's from the communities you come from. And I think that's one of the things I do want to point out is that there's a thing called a scarcity mindset, right? When you come from a community that has scarce resources, oftentimes you'll see crab mentality where somebody's rising up, they kind of pull them down. And I don't fault them, actually, because that is true. Like Squid Games kind of is a thing, right? Like the Hunger Games kind of is a thing in the system that we have. And that if somebody gets something, that means you get less because there's a scarcity mindset. So for me, a lot of the hate that I get actually is from other people in the Asian community who are more conservative. Because a couple of things. First off, they feel as if by me getting credit, they don't get credit. But also, they were the ones that told me that I would never amount to much. But when I become a senator, then it's like, wait, I'm the one that failed, not him. So that makes them look bad as well. And I say that very high level, not at a specific person, but like there is a mindset that we as a community need to break out of as well and stop thinking of ourselves as guests in this in this state or in this city. as owners of it as well. We need to take ownership of our space here, because I think that's missing sometimes.
No, that's a good point. I remember me and Arif were talking about this in terms of I call it like the predisposition kind of disease, where people kind of have this predisposed trajectory for you without even knowing what you're capable of and what you really want for yourself. And then the second you go and accomplish that, it shatters that predisposition, and so they have to tell themselves they're wrong. Yeah, you know, and people don't like telling themselves they're wrong, right? Yeah. So I think a lot of times it's kind of like, it's like an individual thing that people have to deal with. But what's really good is the representation aspect of it is what I'm getting from that, right? Like, people aren't gonna believe it because they don't see it, right? So that crab in the barrel mentality kind of comes from that. It's like, I don't believe that all of us can do this at once. Yeah. So if I get it, I got it, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think the more we just keep pushing, that's why our platform is kind of built on that. It's like, yo, can we just show you that people are doing these things? There's a lot of people, multiple people who look like you who are doing these things, and, you know, you could be one of them.
And that's more powerful than you even realize, right? So I didn't realize that there were other progressive Vietnamese people, just because our community is generally more conservative. There's a random Facebook group called the Asian Hustle Network that has like hundreds of thousands of people, and like it's all these Asians doing crazy cool things. And I'm like, I didn't realize that was an option. You can like start your own business and like do whatever. And like I made a post in there once and it had like 2,000 likes and folks just all over. Yeah. But that's how powerful it is to tell your stories, because there are other people out there who are either like you or didn't realize that was a possibility. Because for me, like one of my quotes is that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And for me, a lot of times, you know, folks from where I grew up didn't get that opportunity. But there are definitely talented folks that I grew up with. And the fact that I only know like 2 or 3 people from my community that are in tech, I'm like, that's wild, because we got like all the tech companies here. So for me, it's about how do we uplift and amplify the voices of people who are here? How do we enable them to be successful? Telling the story is one, because you have to believe as well. Yeah. Because there's a lot of forces telling you that you aren't going to be successful. That's why it's even more important to push back on that narrative.
I think that goes back to the part of like being lonely. It's like you might be in the same position as somebody, and then somebody might have been in the same position as you were before, and then they see you up here and they're just like, oh wow, I could do that, you know. So that's like, it's just powerful to like spread that, you know what I mean? And like show people that
you should just know, and you never know who's watching, especially nowadays with social media.
Dude, I had one of the volunteers on my campaign. She was a page. So in the legislature, there's a page program where, you know, if you're 14 to 16, you could come down and work there. And I make a point to like talk to all the pages whenever I see them. So one of the gals who paged my first year was like, the reason why I'm volunteering your campaign, she's graduated in college now, was like, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was in high school. I went and paged in the legislature. You sat down and talked to me for 30 seconds. I don't remember. But she's like, and that changed my mindset. That somebody that was a senator in Washington State cared about what I thought and thought that I belonged here as well. And now she's getting involved in politics. Wow. And like, I remember that experience for me too. I remember my band teacher freshman year of high school. I was thinking about running for class president. And like, I didn't know anybody. It was a new school, all these new kids that knew each other, but I didn't know them because it was a Catholic school, and I was new. And one of the things you have to do is you get 100 signatures, and then you also have to have a teacher sign off saying that, you're going to run for class president. Yeah. So I talked to all these teachers, and they're like, oh, that's going to be a hard race because, you know, you're new and nobody knows who you are. Band teacher, oh, you're going to crush it. You're great. I know you're an awesome person. You're a fantastic individual. You deserve to be in leadership. And that was the first time somebody was like, oh, you belong in this space. So I signed right up and ran. Right? That was one of the biggest things. Wow. And like, I remember, it just takes one.
All it takes is one person.
Random band, Jim Payton, Mr. Payton, like, right?
Yeah.
Like, just
you don't forget it either.
You don't forget it.
You can't forget those.
You know? Shout out Mr. Payton, man.
Yeah, right? That's what I'm saying. I see him every once in a while.
You went to Kennedy High School?
I went to Kennedy High School.
Yeah, okay. Shout out to Mr. Payton if he's still there. You know,
he's not there anymore, but I know he's in the area.
Shout out to him, man. And everybody out there who's doing that for other people as well.
It's important. It is important because it does take that one spark sometimes.
Nah, man, it's important. We got to keep building each other up. You know what I mean? And it's big. A question I did want to ask you is, for where you're at now and all that you've accomplished, and obviously there's much more I'm sure you want to accomplish. What would you tell younger Joe, like say high school, maybe even younger? What would you tell him to kind of let him know, like, okay, you're doing the right thing? Or what would you say to him?
Oh, just don't be scared. I think that's probably the biggest thing. Because I'll be honest with you, even when I got into this race, I had a imposter syndrome, where I didn't know if I belonged in a race like this, or I had that when I was running for the legislature. And I think that self-doubt kind of wears you down a little bit, where you don't pick options that maybe would have been better, you just didn't know about it. So I think for me, it's just like, it's okay to be a little bit arrogant. It's okay to take that step that you didn't expect that you could take. It's okay to, like, you know, put yourself out there, because that's how you get ahead, and that's how you help people as well. So that's probably the biggest thing, is that, you know, don't worry about what everybody else says, worry about what you can be doing, because nobody's going to stop. I mean, like, kind of one of my mentality in the legislature, and the reason why we've been able to pass so many bills and do all these different things is because I played poker in college. So I don't know if you guys, you know, play poker, but there's kind of this rule in poker where you should always be the aggressor, right? Like, if by default, be the aggressive person, because people inherently will fold. People inherently, when faced with adversity, will fold.
That's real.
Yeah. So for me, it's always like, be the aggressor, be the aggressor. Even if you fail, you're gonna probably win most of the time. And it worked in poker. And what's funny is it works in the legislature. Right. So, like what I said before, is that if you do the bare minimum, you can get by for at least a decade before anybody notices. And what I notice is that when I choose to be aggressive and push certain things, it takes effort from them to stop me. Right. And it's like, so what's funny is that I did a couple of things, and I was like, oh man, that was bold, I'm probably gonna get in trouble. And like the next year, nobody said anything, nobody stopped me, nobody messed with me, because they were like, that's Joe, and he's gonna like push it through, and like and like it's gonna cause us like some trouble if you try to stop him as well. But that's the thing, is that you have to be bold. Just know that being aggressive is a positive thing. Like, you can't get something done unless you do it. And for us, at least in the Asian community where I came from, there's a lot of fear and self-doubt, just part of our culture. And to have to go against that paradigm is uncomfortable. But it's also important for us to show that there's the path forward. My daughter freaking texts with the governor now, right? Like, I want to have their experiences be so different than mine. Trudy, Inslee, and Jay, they have a bee farm, and they gave us a jar of honey. So she was like, where does honey come from? I was like, I don't know, ask Jay. Ask like video chatted him. It was dope. Like, I want that. I want my kids to have that level of audacity where they could talk to a governor, they could talk to anybody, and like, it's fine.
Aggression. Well, it's crazy. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle, man. He has a line in one of his songs called "Aggressive Intelligence," and I think that's, you can't just be aggressive. You got to be intelligent and intentional about how you do it. So
that's true.
That's real. I'm glad you touched on that. Yeah, man. Well, this was a powerful episode, man. You know, you got any final questions before we get to the, you know, our main questions we love to ask them too?
Yeah, where can people find you, contribute to the campaign?
Yeah. First off, vote, right? November 2nd is the deadline. Make sure you get out and vote. That is the most important thing. You can find us online, meetjoewen, NGUYEN.com. That's all of my handles as well. But the biggest thing that I want to leave with folks is that you are more powerful than you even realize. You are more powerful than you even realize. And if you show up to do work, you'd be surprised at how much you can actually get done. So whether you want to volunteer in the campaign, whether there's an issue that you want to fight for in your community, if you want to talk to a legislator about something, show up and do the work, and you'd be shocked at how much you can get done, because people actually do want to work with you. There are folks out in the community who, when they see a young person of color trying to get involved, they will try to help, because that's how we move things forward. There's not enough, but that's how we get more people. So
got to be proactive.
Be proactive, and like, it's easy to kind of fall in that trap that you don't feel as if you belong somewhere. But you do. And I get that it is hard, right? Like, I worked 2 jobs. You know, I was washing dishes, I was working retail, I was going to school. So it's hard to get involved sometimes, but if you can, even in a little way, you'd be surprised at how transformational that can be.
No, for sure. That's real, man.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I feel like that's half the battle. And then I hear people say, oh man, I got lucky because I went to whatever they went to, and I'm like, you really didn't get lucky. You actually went, and then you got that opportunity, you know. So I'm just glad you brought that up. I'm a believer in that, because
I was like, what if I didn't run? Like, I know that wasn't like a sure thing. Right? Like, I had no idea. I was like, I probably can win the state senate. I mean, I know a lot of people here, but like, it wasn't like I was gonna run. So
you don't know until you try, right?
You don't know until you try.
You don't know until you try.
Exactly.
Don't know. I mean, like, I'll be honest. And there are definitely folks out there who the society allows them to just do things because of their demographic. I'm just talking.
There's a runway.
There's a runway for them. That's not one for us. And like, we won't be able to get ahead unless we try.
I love that. Man. I love that, man. I'm inspired, man. I hope anybody who's listening or watching, if you're not inspired, Go ahead and run it back. Watch it again. Pay attention. But yeah, man, I'm glad you touched on that. And make sure, yes, like you did say, everybody get out there and vote. Make sure you vote, man. Make sure you exercise that right. Now, we always ask our guests this question before we let you guys go. So if you can, my brother, what's one word to describe what keeps you on the up and up and why?
Keeps me on the up and up, like...
Keeps you going.
Keeps me going?
Yeah.
Oh.
And why?
I think it's the future. Right? Like, whether it's our kids, whether it's our society, I believe that we can build a better future. Like, I firmly believe that, right? Like, if we just change some things. If we had a legal system that invested in our kids versus incarcerating them. If we had investments in, like, basic needs programs to keep people stable. I'm very optimistic and hopeful for what we can accomplish in King County because we do have the opportunity to build a brighter future for all of us, but it takes action. So the future is why I'm on the up and up, because I believe that we have an opportunity to do some great things.
Yes, sir, man. There you have it, the future.
There you have
I think that's the first time we got future as the one word, too. There you go, man.
There you go.
Let's go, man. Let's go. Well, with that said, man, Joe, again, we appreciate you coming through and spending some time with us. And I know you're a very busy guy, so.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man, definitely. And with that being said, I think it's safe to say Joe Nguyen and his whole team are officially members of the Up and Up. Can we get a round of applause? Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that episode and that now you have a better understanding of what it means to live life on the up and up.
To continue supporting the podcast and the entire Up and Up movement, be sure to rate, review, like, and subscribe.
As well as follow us @_the Up and Up on all social media platforms to stay connected with everything the Up and Up has coming your way.
Thanks for listening, and until the next one,
keep it on the up and up.